to handle them. You can manipulate them, you can unroll as much as you want or go back, and you can find your own rhythm of reading, which is not possible as a museum visitor, unfortunately. So I want you to keep in mind that this physical relationship to the actual artifact in the galleries is quite different to what it was when they were created. Right. The calligraphy, as you can see, was done by a very skilled scribe. He used a rhythmic application of thick and then thinner inks that he applied, and it's very elegant. But neither scribe nor painter of these scrolls are known, and this is usually the case. There are some attributions in some scrolls, but usually scribes nor painters are mentioned. But you can see also that the decorated paper of the calligraphy is very lavishly decorated, right, with gold paint of various kinds. Unfortunately, I can't show you more of the calligraphy because we have to move on with the story. All right, so as usual, you read a scene from right to left. And what you see here is the scene where Taishokan in the center is actually praying to his ancestral deities. That is actually himself. But in any way, he's praying to them at the Kasuga Shrine in Nara. And anybody who's a bit proficient in Japanese iconography would recognize this as being Nara, with a deer frolicking around, and the kind of rural setting that this is in. He prays for the successful construction of the Kofukuji temple, which together with the Kasuga Shrine are the tutelary sacred center of the Fujiwara clan. This scene is about 50 centimeters long, which was the usual size of a sheet of paper in the 17th century, and this is about the width of your shoulders, and so you can actually hold the scroll like this most comfortably. But there are also double scenes, as we will see. So the narrative goes like this. He prays for a successful construction of the Kofukuji Golden Hall and an icon that he was to insert there. But then rumors of the famous beauty of his daughter, of his second daughter, reaches the Chinese court. And Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty, who's actually an historical figure, longs to see her. And this is one of the double-length scenes that you can see. It's about 100 centimeters long, pretty long. And this is actually on view upstairs in the gallery, so please take a look. Taizong finally yields to his longing and sends an envoy to Japan to ask for the hand of Taishokan's daughter, who's called Ko Hakunyo, or Princess Red and White, which is, of course, very auspicious, right? Right, so this is one scene, and notice how similar this scene is to the next one. It's this one. And there you see, as in the detail on the lower right, that Ko Hakunyo is actually already consenting. Well, she didn't have a say, but Taishokan had her go as the bride to China, and you can distinguish her, of course, by her Japanese garb as opposed to the Chinese ladies in waiting. She also has some Japanese attendants, and they are boarding a ship that sports an osprey head that comes together with a pair of, these are paired with the dragon head, there's the dragon again, and the osprey head, and they are often recounted in prose texts already in the 11th century as being pleasure boats of the aristocracy. But this doesn't matter here because this is actually, it's supposed to be Chinese, but it says, this is of high social stature, what's going on. Finally, she ends up in the Chinese court together with Emperor Taizong. And she is not only beautiful, but she also has miraculous powers that cure illnesses, and the country, China, prospers because of her. And finally, Taizong grants her wishes. So she wishes to send jewels and treasures, and one particular, the most treasured jewel from China to Japan, and it takes some time for Taizong to finally agree to that. So they appoint the most strong and, best warrior to accompany the ship to Japan, and this is warrior Wanhu. We see him here, and this is the second part of the story, where the jewel that is now originated by the daughter of Taishokan is being stolen, and we will see that this also entails one love story. So we've had Tang Taizong with Ko Hakunyo, and now we have a different set of a couple. Here we see Wanhu, who already engages in a dialogue with the Ashura demons, who the dragon kings of the sea had sent because they are known to be very fond of waging wars. And the dragon kings of the sea suffer from all kinds of illnesses and hope that by retrieving the jewel, they will be able to attain enlightenment. So they sent the Ashura and they exchange a word right here. And then comes one of the most beloved scenes of the story, which of course is also a war or battle scene. You can see in the detail, this of course is Wanhu himself, very much in the style of a Japanese warrior almost, wearing this kind of backpack that is a sign of his prominence, his most important role, but also it prevents arrows from hitting him from the back. But he's right in the center of the composition, as you can see from the entire spread, and the depiction is rather literal. So you see the Ashura demons throwing rocks, which is mentioned, and then of course the horses can ride on the sea, so there are a lot of miraculous things happening. And you're lucky that this scene is not only on show, but also the one from the New York Public Library, so you can see them in comparison and see how the painters differently interpret the scene. But of course the Chinese win, right? Wanhu is the best warrior not to be beaten. So the Dragon Kings come up with another idea, which is they send the Dragon Princess to seduce the general Wanhu. And we see her here where she's detected in a boat, and Wanhu, with a speaking gesture, invites her into the boat, and she's kind of, no, no, no. But then finally, of course, she goes in. And here is a second scene where they engage in a very long, very Buddhist terminology saturated dialogue, which is only a thinly disguised story about sex. So finally, they end up, she gives in, well, not she gives in, she tries, plays the kind of female, I don't really want to, but finally, she gets to see the jewel. This is the aim, right? So Wanhu concedes, okay, you get to see the jewel, and I get something instead. And so she gets the jewel and vanishes in the sea. And so the jewel is stolen. The second part then is over, and we just see here how the defeated Chinese deliver the remaining treasures to Kamatari or Taishokan, who reads in the letter from his daughter the list of the treasures and notices that the jewel is missing. So he asks the general Wanhu to take him back to the bay where the jewel was stolen so that he can scheme something up. And this is where Taishokan's wisdom comes in. This wisdom plays an enormous role because Japan, in the text it says, is such a small country vis-a-vis China, but it's best in its wisdom. So Taishokan is a representative of that. So we see him here as he is disguised as a kind of Edo period warrior, if you will, with a sword, and he ogles the most able diver, which is this one, obviously, right? This is the rural area of Fusazaki, the later name of their son, and they get married, and this is very nice prose, nicely described. And before long, they have a son, and this is the son, called Fusazaki. And then Taishokan reveals his actual identity to the diver and says, well, I'm, the aristocrat Fujiwara no Kamatani. And she says, oh my God, I want to die because our social difference is so high, I can't go on living. And then he says, no, not yet. You better get the jewel first, right? So she says, well, okay, I first have to investigate. And this is what she did. She went to the dragon palace of the sea, beneath the sea, looks about the whereabouts and how it's protected, and says, it's impossible, right? This is her gesture. I went, I saw it, it doesn't work. And this, by the way, is a wet nurse. She almost looks like the wife, right? But she's just the wet nurse. But she's the one who went and saw. And so Taishokan comes up with another scheme, which is that he knows the dragon kings of the sea, they love dance and music in order to forget their sufferings. Okay, so he stages on boats on the sea dances and music, and before long, of course, the Dragon Kings of the Sea arrive. Please notice, and we will come back to that later on, that Dragon Kings usually are male. Here they are female and male, and they are dressed as a Chinese emperor and his empress, maybe, right, standing on dragons to make them Dragon Kings of the Sea. And so the final scene, and in the meantime, of course, the diver is able to steal the jewel. And then we have this penultimate scene where she is, and this is the climactic scene that comes up in many, many different versions right through the I think 20th century, even in small Indo and Tsuba and so forth. So you see her here as she fights one dragon actually catches it, that she stole the jewel, and follows her. And although she has a rope around her belly and they pull her up, the dragon is able to pursue her, and she defends herself. She holds a dagger in her hand, for a different purpose. Then finally, the dragon bites her legs off and she dies. But she uses the dagger to cut her belly open and insert the jewel, right? So she's then pulled up to the beach, and then Taishokan says, oh my God, she didn't get the jewel. But then he sees a wound and he sees the jewel, and then he's overjoyed, and of course the succession of the Fujiwara is granted. And then we will come back to the actual ending of the Berg Scroll at the end of my talk. But you see a surrogate last scene of the New York Public Library version, which is also on show there, upstairs, where you see Taishokan and his son lamenting over the poor dead diver. So, now we will see a different format. This is also on show upstairs. You can see this is actually a monumental screen. Each of the screens measures about 3.5 meters, total of 7 meters, is about as tall as I am about, and it is usually folded. Upstairs you will see it folded, so that creates a totally different sense of space in the folds themselves. So this would be in, this would be sticking out, this would be sticking out, so there's a sense of space that you can't convey this way. But you can see the entire story at basically one eyesight. Of course you move around a little bit, but you don't have to roll or change pages or anything. This is one of about 11 folding screens of the so-called continuous composition, or I call them that, which is that there's not a division, a clear-cut division, but actually, scenes that evolve in various ways. I'm going to show them to you in a minute. They are characterized, this type of screens are characterized by rich pigments, original iconographies that always pull out one or two scenes and kind of obliterate or neglect other scenes instead. And so very often the bridal procession from Kohaku-nyo to China is highlighted, as we will see in a minute, and a juxtaposition of China and Japan, which is one of the main themes and one of the reasons why the story is so successful as well. So we have the Chinese palace here and the Japanese palace here, and I'm going through the individual scenes right now. So the right-hand screen, you see, starts on the top and moves like this, almost like a horseshoe. It starts with the Kasuga shrine, but the Kofukuji is also depicted. You never get to see that in emaki, in hand scrolls. Then you see how Kohaku-nyo, there's a detail here of her as she mounts the carriage and in a very gorgeous procession proceeds to the ships that are there from the Chinese. And here she sits in again, an osprey head adorned ship, and this is the detail of her here. And then they arrive, and then she moves up to the palace, and here she sits together with Taizo. So this is basically about the first part of the story, with Kohaku-nyo moving from Japan to China. And then you can see how closely linked there is a kind of interpictorial dialogue between different iconographies that are popular at the same time. Below you see the left side of a pair, this is the other pair, of a screen that tells of the story of the unending sorrow. And this, the Chogonka in Japanese, and this refers to the tragic love story of Emperor Xuanzong